So I have not been on here in a moment, but it's because I'm working on some funding so I can do this full time. So I am really excited to be able to come back and do this live stream in a way where I can address a very, very large topic. So I feel like that to start talking about Marianne Williamson, I have to talk about the media. And that's kind of one of the first things that people responded to on here, because I was talking about how our media is super dishonest. And right now, when you look at how the media is reporting on Marianne Williamson, it's completely dishonest. So let's first establish why the media is dishonest. Well, there's tons of money in it. The people who work in media have tons of money, and the status quo is treating them really well. So clearly, they are wanting to keep things in a way that has been so beneficial to them. So they don't want anybody who's going to shake up the status quo too much. So when you think about when Bernie and Biden were running against each other in the primaries, think about what the media was saying. They were saying, you can't vote for Bernie because Biden is the most electable and Trump is an existential threat. So if you don't vote for someone who is more electable, then you could be risking Trump. Now, the funny thing is even Trump talked about how it would be more difficult to run against Bernie because Bernie had a wide range of appeal to people from both sides of the political spectrum. And Bernie also appealed to a lot of people who had never been involved in politics before. But the media was more concerned with keeping the status quo than actually supporting a candidate who really would have given Trump more of a run for his money. So I definitely feel like the media has proven to us in the past that they are more concerned with pushing a candidate that protects the status quo than a candidate that is more likely to win, because despite their constant refrain that Biden was more electable, he was literally having faux pas after faux pas. It was ridiculous. So we have run into a very interesting situation now because we have Marianne Williamson who ran, in a past presidential campaign, and they kept talking about how she was the crystal lady. And it's funny because if you look at her body of work, she's never talked about crystals. That is just not her lane. But they said it so much that people started thinking, oh, if you support Marianne Williamson, then you're just trying to do some like new age hoo-ha whatever. But if you look at her body of work, this Course in Miracles, it's actually talking about another way to interpret the Bible. And every single president that we've had thus far has said that they, read the Bible and that is within their belief system. So it's kind of crazy that suddenly media has a problem with someone's spiritual beliefs when it's literally based on the same book that all of our other presidents have been basing their political beliefs on and their religious beliefs on. So I kind of just think that is an issue that shouldn't even really be discussed or matter, because we haven't had a president who isn't religious, not yet at least. So now we listen to the current smears about Marianne Williamson, and these smears are a little bit more insidious than they used to be because it was easier to see through the way that the media was saying, oh, she's some new age, spiritualist. It was a lot easier to see through that if you looked into it and you realized it's based off the same spiritual book that everybody else is following. But now they're saying, okay, well, this lady, she is a terrible boss. And it is very interesting because I saw a video not long ago of a congressperson grabbing the head of another congressperson because he was freaking out on someone else in there. So I don't know when we decided that you had to be an awesome boss to be a good president. But the interesting thing is that we look at all of these different smears that the media comes up with. And this is kind of a poor one, really, because how many people are so concerned that someone got angry and that makes them into someone who cannot lead our country? Do I think that she actually threw her phone? No, because this is the sort of thing that the media does. I think it was Alex Morris. Was he the guy who the media decided was acting very inappropriate? And then later on, we find out that it was made up. We get the text messages where they're planning this smear campaign. And then we find out we all abandoned this guy because we thought he was a bad guy. And so I think this strategy is being replayed right now. But even if she did throw her phone, I mean, I just don't really see why it is such a fundamental issue. It's not, it's so basic, because when you think of all the smears you could come up with, that's the best they got. It makes me feel a little more secure, honestly. So let's get past all the smears and everything and get to what she actually believes, because that's the only reason that you should support someone. It's based on their belief systems, and it's based on how they actually want to run the country, and not some sort of drama. MAGA says on media are out to get Trump. Fox News, Newsmax. I remember I was getting so many people telling me I needed to check out Newsmax right when it got big, because they're like, oh, this is an alternate, news source, and mainstream media is not honest. And it is very interesting that now we're watching these different lawsuits play out with the Dominion voting systems, and we're seeing all these behind the scenes discussions at Fox News, but we're also seeing how there's independent news corporations that really stepped off of the election stories, and we're seeing how we're watching that people were dishonest in media, and we're seeing it in a court of law where the punishments for being dishonest are much higher. So that is a really interesting story that I am definitely following, and I do want to do a more in-depth video about it. But I also want to talk about this lady, because I feel like that people really aren't getting any idea of who she actually is. So most people think that FDR was pretty great. They look at his ability to pull our country back from, the Great Depression, and they see that there is this individual who was able to completely shake up the way of doing things and put our country on a track to be a more economically robust and powerful country. And so the amazing thing is that Marianne Williamson loves FDR and was around during that time and remembers seeing all the things he was doing, and remembers how he turned around our economic system really on its head to deal with some really serious fundamental issues in the economic inequality that was causing a lot of breakdown in our social fabric. So now, of course, we want to address things where no one is left behind. When you look back then, you have this wonderful bill that helped a lot of soldiers returning be able to actually get housing, but it excluded people that weren't white. So clearly there were issues, and now we need to be able to take these ideas of helping working people and giving them the chance to elevate themselves. So we need to bring those ideas and the economic understanding that we can choose to put all of our economic power into tax cuts for the most wealthy people and multinational corporations, or we can choose these funds to be able to give people just a shot. And so when we listen to her talk about her policies, when we listen to Marianne Williamson talk policies, she knows what she's talking about. She's smart. She is educated, and she knows her history. And understanding our history is so important, because we have actual experiments that have played out in our country that let us know what works and what doesn't. And so we are able to learn so much by having that level of understanding. And I think that's sorely missing from our politics. And she is very inspiring when she talks about this history and everything that FDR accomplished. So I'm trying to see, I haven't missed anything. Awesome. So some of the things that she talks about doing, I think are very powerful. I like the way that sticking a fork in the socket does not work. Don't do that. So I like the way that she looks at our system as a whole. She recognizes that our system is so broken and is so sick that it is hurting the people who really need to be entering into the economic system right now. So people who are younger, even if you get a good job, you're not getting a house like your parents. Even if you have great education, even if you are working constantly, buying into the hustle culture, all that fun stuff, you're still not able to have the same economic power that you used to. When we look at the difference in how much people made back in the 60s, and we look at the bosses and how much they made versus their workers, that difference, it matters because our economy is affected by how much money is flowing around in it. But if a very few people have all of it, all of the money, it makes it so that the system is less healthy. The most healthy economic system is going to have lots of people buying things. And then because they buy lots of things, the producers are going to be like, I'm going to produce more stuff because I want to make more money. But the system we have now means that a lot of the workers can't purchase a lot of things. They're barely scraping by. And then the people who are producing things, instead of wanting to produce the things to make more money, they go, well, I'm going to buy my own stock. I got a new light and I got this fly that's loving it, maybe more than I am. So we look at how different producers are making money now, and they're making money by cutting corners for their workers, by bringing down pay as much as possible, and by playing with investments in the stock market instead of this, desire to increase their production and hire more people and grow their money that way. So that's sort of what they've been forced into because the average person doesn't have enough money to be able to buy the level of products that need to be bought to encourage this sort of expansion in our economy. And if you look at the game Monopoly, you see it was originally developed to explain how once you start owning everything and everyone else starts paying you for what you already own, you're eventually going to take their money and they're going to have no way to get the money back, and they're just going to struggle and struggle until they implode. This is true. It happens every time the liberals are in power. The unfortunate thing is that it happens thus far, no matter who's in power. And that is really heartbreaking. And I understand why we have different media corporations that we've listened to. And depending on which media corporation you're listening to, the other party is at fault. The other party is blocking it. The other party is making it impossible for you to do what you want to do to make the country better. But the fact of the matter is, both parties are made up by super wealthy people who are benefiting from the system. So neither party wants to solve this. And that's why we do need political leaders who see that the problem is the system that we're living in. And that is why these people like Bernie, like Marianne, are so fundamentally dangerous for the status quo and for wealthy people, because there are Jeff Bezos, 1 year and his taxes, wealthiest dude on the planet, right? At least for, it changes, but at least for a little while, he 1 year got a tax rebate. He got a refund. That is nuts. FedEx didn't pay taxes 1 year, federal taxes 1 year. There are so many super wealthy people who are not paying taxes. They're massive corporations that are not paying taxes, and they're getting to just scoop in all of this money. And then what these companies do is they go and they give donations to both sides. When we look at the whole, wasn't it SBV? Sam Bankman-Fried, yeah, him, who is now, I'm pretty sure he's on house arrest now, but he went and he donated to both parties because he just didn't want crypto to be regulated because he was doing all sorts of shady things. So he did dark money contributions for the Republican Party because the media gave him all these like props for donating to the Democratic Party, and so he donated to the Democratic Party, and he's like, oh, I'm getting great press, but he's also donating to the other party because at the end of the day, his goal is to make as much money as possible. And at the end of the day, that's the goal of people who work in corporations. I have a business degree, and they taught us to look at everything as a numbers game. We had to compete against each other for our grades to have this like simulator of international business. And in the end, my team won because we're like, okay, we're going to crank out crappy products, not, pay people well and just take advantage of these massive economies of scale, meaning we're just going to do everything on a massive level. And we won. And I hate that that's what happened because it teaches the future business leaders to only think of things in terms of their short-term money-making ability. Let's see, I want to make sure I didn't miss anything because people are chatting. I'm 66 and I've witnessed it every time the liberals are in power because they don't have a clue. I'm super curious if you can give me a time period where either party really changed things for the better. Because if you look at the Trump tax cuts and you see how it was structured, the tax cuts that were benefiting, middle income earners and working class people, those had sunset provisions, whereas the tax cuts for the very, very top, those tax cuts are not meant to end. So despite the fact that, he talked a lot about helping, people who are in the working class be able to avoid paying as many taxes, those tax cuts were designed originally to end. And, that we can see that. Tell me the last time a liberal news organization. I'm super not into mainstream media. That's been something I've been against from the very beginning. And sometimes it's easier to see the other side's dishonesty than the one that you've grown up around. And that's super understandable. But at the end of the day, they are corporations, and corporations are actually legally required to maximize profit to their shareholders. So they are legally required to make decisions based solely on how much money they can make. And we can even see how, the text messages from Tucker Carlson, talked about how he was worried that stock prices for, Fox News were falling when someone came out and said some things that were against the idea that that Dominion had switched votes and things like that. Marianne W. is my choice this year. She speaks about key issues so clearly and with such conviction. I love that people are looking at her for the way that she speaks about issues, because so often people will turn on mainstream media and regurgitate whatever is said. And I remember when I was younger, I was super guilty of that. And I would just parrot the electability ideas, all of that. And I didn't go to the candidate themselves to see what they had to say. And I think it is incredible to think about supporting a candidate who realizes that we need to shake up this system in a really big way. Can't trust Washington. That is true. The vast majority of people in Congress are millionaires. I don't know if there's anyone who's not a millionaire. So maybe they just don't even understand what it's like to be a worker. It used to be where if you had a job at a department store, you could support an entire family on that salary. And now that would never happen. You have to have two people working to support a family. And it's so interesting because you have politicians who say that they want to support the family unit, but they don't seem to be willing to recognize what it would take to make this a more friendly atmosphere to raise a family in. Raising wages so that you can support a family on a single salary would help the fabric of our families and our communities. This is not a situation where you can just say that you want families to flourish and they're going to flourish in this economic climate. When you are looking at the idea of, do I want to have a kid in this economy? And you realize that childcare is so costly that it would cost a full salary to get it. So you might as well stay home and care for your child, but then you're limited to one salary that somehow has to support your whole family. It really makes it an impossible calculation. And then we look at companies like Walmart that just assume that they can continue to pay these really low wages, and they actually have classes to help their employees sign up for government benefits. Well, look, if you want to decrease government benefits, then maybe don't expect people to be able to live in this date and time with inflation, what it is, for less than $8 an hour. That is truly insane. And so we have set up a system where corporations expect the government to subsidize paying their employees. They have to pay their taxes, otherwise we have problems. Well, what happens when people don't pay taxes, and I kind of slowed down the growth of my channel so that I could address a lot of debt stuff and economic stuff, and I know that's a lot more boring to people, but I do think it's important to have that background because we're about to have this big old $1 trillion coin showdown, and I want people to understand everything around that before I jump into kind of the buzzword topic. So basically, the problem is when people who have tons of money don't pay their taxes, the government has to go and borrow. And a lot of times the government borrows from the same people that don't have to pay taxes. So what happens are these wealthy people, they donate to all these politicians who then vote to make the tax system really friendly to their donors. So then their donors save so much more money than what they spend donating to these politicians. And then with all of this extra money, they can donate to politicians even more, get more influence, get more power. And then the government cannot be sustained through tax dollars. And so the government goes to these same wealthy individuals and then they borrow money from them. And these wealthy individuals then get to collect interest on, let's be honest, the taxes that they should be paying. And you're a great spokesperson. Thank you. Entertainment was made to pay $700+ million because it was found libelous. I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about, but please do give me some more information on that. Only way back early, LBJ. I would love to hear more about what you mean by what you think, what policy you're talking about. Because that's the thing about history is we can pull policies from lots of different people and choose the very best of what has worked, because we are in a situation where the income inequality now, I think it's worse than it was right before the Great Depression. So that's a really bad sign. And at the same time, we have the Federal Reserve, jacking up interest rates, which is meant to, cool down the economy. But unfortunately, when we look at what is contributing to inflation, a lot of it is price gouging, because we're listening to these earning calls that corporations have to put out legally for their shareholders. So if you listen to these earning calls, they're like, hey, so everybody thinks inflation is going on, so we just added a little bit extra. We're calling it inflation. And we're saying, oh no, we cannot help it. We had to increase our prices. Inflation, what are you going to do? And so they're making extra money and their profits are going up. I understand that some prices are going to need to increase to cover the increased costs of supplies, because we have set up the supply chain where most things are overseas. And so when China decides to shut down their economy because of their zero COVID policy, when they decide to not have as much production, then we can't get the same goods and services, or not services, the same goods and items that we were expecting to get from them. So then that, brings our costs up. So some prices are going to rise because we did have a breakdown in our supply chain, and we do have a war going on, and we do have issues with energy costs. So some prices are going to be forced to go up, but these corporations are raising their prices more than they need to cover the increased costs of their inputs. And so this is not addressing that. The idea of increasing interest rates with the Federal Reserve, that is not addressing this root cause. And so what it's doing is it's making us have to pay more on our credit cards because we're living in a society where we are not making enough money to be able to afford to pay for things out of our salaries. So everybody has credit cards. So now we're having to pay more every month for our credit cards. We're paying more on our car payments, our mortgages, all of that. So it's really hurting the working person even more. And I just don't think it's going to have the sort of effect they're expecting. Inflation has already slowed quite a lot, and they're continuing to increase these interest rates. And now you listen to these super powerful financial people talk about how they're expecting a recession, and they're excited about it. They're ready for it. So, the working class is really being forced to pay for this economy that's completely out of control. What are your thoughts on Riley Gaines? I don't actually know who that is. That's one thing about this channel. I am always going to be honest with y'all. I do not always need to be right. So let me look that up. While I look that up, let's see what else. Adults have to pay their taxes. Yes, but when you have a tax professional who finds all the loopholes, or when you have so much money, you're able to write off and, amortize all of these different items that you have, suddenly you don't have to pay those taxes anymore, which is very interesting. All right. Oh, yes, I see. Okay, so Fox News. I recognize his face. I just didn't know his name. I feel like I should probably do a whole nother stream about specific people in the news, because let's be honest, the people who are the news anchors that you see, they're reading off of teleprompter. Clearly I need a teleprompter. So they're reading off of a teleprompter. So half the time the words they're saying are not even their own. They're news actors. When I was younger, I was interested in being an actor. And so I learned a lot about that. I talked to people who were in, television, who were newscasters, and they literally would read the words that scroll across like the camera. So the camera can't see the words, but it's like literally scrolling across the lens, and you just read it. You literally just read it. So a lot of these people aren't even sharing what they themselves think. If you think about it from that angle, you're able to see why independent media has become so popular, because there is a dishonesty just inherent in the business model. The fly loves my light. Oh my God. It's one. So you see this dishonesty that is inherent in their business model, because for one, they're acting like they're talking to you and this isn't completely planned, and that's not true. And for two, a lot of times they're just not even interested in learning about it themselves, because they're just there to get their paycheck. And I think this is true across media corporations, because they're news actors, they're actors. So at least with this sort of forum, you have a person who is there standing behind their beliefs. And hopefully you can find a person who wants to be honest and who is okay with not knowing everything, and who is more interested in trying to figure out what's going on in this insane situation, and who is not obsessed with being a member of a tribe and therefore completely blind to what the other tribe is doing. So let me see. It's sad that 25 people on this app will watch this, yet thousands are watching a sleeping. Oh my God. I should just do a sleeping live. What's the deal with that? Honestly, I don't understand. Do they like to bother the people who groan and thrash around? It's kind of hilarious. But I haven't been doing a lot of lives, so I know I haven't really been feeding the growth on this. I've been trying to figure out how to get some more funding so I can spend more time on this, because I am passionate about it, and that's still in the works. But hopefully y'all can help me, because the one thing that I feel like I have to offer that a lot of people are not offering in this space is I don't have to be right. And I do genuinely want to be honest. So if I get something wrong, it's because I genuinely believe the wrong thing. And I've been wrong so much. But what I try to do, y'all are the sweetest in the world. Oh my God. Thank you. what I'm trying to do is I'm wanting to be someone who is willing to grow. And I try to constantly prove myself wrong. If I prove myself wrong, oh my God, y'all are the sweetest. I barely even know what this is, honestly. Oh, thank you. Homeland. Oh my God. That is no freaking way. No freaking way. Oh my God, I did not think this would happen. Does that mean I got to the goal? Oh, I promised my pet, so I'll bring my pet out in a second. Because I did not think that would happen. Wow, that's so sweet, y'all. Walmart pays $14. And I'm glad that they've increased it. But when we look at the way that the economics that have changed, wow, I'm just like flustered. Y'all are so sweet. The way that economics have changed, if we consider how much productivity has increased since like the 60s, we would all be making over $20 an hour, you know? So, and we're living in this situation where inflation has increased things so much that it's really hard to even afford basic housing. So, yeah, purple rain. You know, I wish I was rich too, but more than anything, because I feel like that I at least am in touch with the struggle, and I genuinely feel like that we can make a difference. We just have to get out there and be as honest as we can and have the conversations. And we can actually be able to get some better politicians in there. Hence the Marianne Williamson thing that I've run around and got back on. I'm so sick of the government, all of them whiskey women. Yeah, we have very few people in the government that I'm happy with right now. And a lot of times someone shows a lot of promise and then they get into government, and then the pressures of media pretending that they're evil for going their own way or for having their own opinions. I see why it's really hard to stick your neck out. But unfortunately, you have to be willing to be hated, because that's what's needed to make a difference right now. And yes, the people who are good right now are going to be smeared so much by the media. So I just sincerely hope that everyone who stumbles across this does try to question at least what they're seeing from media corporations that have so much money. When you think about all of the pharmaceutical ads that happen on media, do you really think that they're doing it because they think you're going to be sitting watching TV and decide, oh, I must have that drug? Maybe there's some. But what they are also doing is they're giving money to these media corporations, and then the media corporations don't talk about how we as the people subsidize the development of many of these drugs in colleges and research laboratories that are government funded. And then we take these new drugs and we give the patents or sell the patents for a very low amount to these private corporations that then jack up the price of these drugs and pass this like a massive, massive cost onto the consumers who helped to pay for the research and development that the government originally paid for. But you don't hear that on media, because look at all the ads they buy. They would not want to mess up that revenue stream because they're a business, and businesses have to make money. How did you develop your politics? I try to prove myself wrong as much as possible because I finally realized that my goal was to try and grow and learn, and I wanted to know what was going on. My goal had to grow from being right, because when you first get into the space, you want to fight, you want to be right, you want to have your little debate, you know. But then I started to realize my goal is that I believe in this country because I have met so many fabulous people. And I know that we, the people, can create something incredible. And I look at the history of this country and I see how we have had periods of time where women couldn't vote. We had slavery. We had so many deeply ingrained institutions that we were able to change. And so I started to realize that rather than only pointing to the problem, which is very important because if we can't agree on the problem, then we can't start to fix it. So that is a huge part of it. But rather than just doing that, I really do want to be a part of what I see as the development of a much better economy, of a much better country. I see all these people saying that if you criticize the country, then you don't love it. I think that's nuts. If you love your country, you want it to be the best it can be. And so you're going to engage and you're going to help other people understand that even if they're sick of politics, which yes, we're all a little sick of politics, but even if you are, it is touching your daily life, because even if you're making plenty of money, which odds are you're not, because you're here in America and it's very, very few people that are actually making good money. But even if you are just totally sick of it, you're making plenty of money, you're doing great, you're still going to have people who are homeless on the streets who are going to be asking for your help, which, a lot of people are very uncomfortable with. Now, I recognize that it is very easy to lose your job and lose your housing, especially when people are paying 50% of their income to be able to have housing. So I recognize that it's very easy to have a series of unfortunate events, and then suddenly you're in a position that you never thought you'd be in. But this is an issue that we can deal with through policy. We can have jobs that are well paying, that are available. We have crumbling infrastructure. Things are falling apart. In the town that I'm in, we have water pipes that are made from wood. Water pipes. That's nuts. And we could literally have jobs for people who want it. I got a new light and it decided to go out. So here we are. Ta-da! That's why the fly is. Maybe I should have just turned it off. But, I'm trying things. So we have all these infrastructure needs. And we have plenty. Okay, maybe it's not going to work. We're just going to let that be. So that's so weird, though. So we have all these infrastructure needs, and we could provide jobs to people who want it. This is my last time of trying it. If not, we're going to forget about it. But we could literally provide jobs that are solidly paying jobs. All right, I'm done with the light. There are solid paying jobs that would allow people to work and have a dignified life. And if good paying jobs are available, then other jobs are going to have to pay more to be able to compete. And when you look at the percentages that people are making in profit, the big CEOs, when you look at the percentages that they are coming up with, those CEOs are making more than they need to want to be CEOs or to sustain the company. So we can let a little bit of this massive profit gap go into allowing people who live in this country to have a shot. And we can also do things to help control the price of housing. We have a lot of people who are from other countries who are putting their money into housing here as a way to hide it from, their governments or to make money. And then these houses stand empty. We can regulate and tax that, in a way that makes it, maybe tax it more than if you want to live in the house. We also have AI programs like RentStar that landlords are using to be able to price their rent at levels higher than what, it's worth in the area. And because they are able to do that, and they're using AI. So in the past, it's illegal to talk to another landlord and be like, we're going to jack our prices more than it should be. But because it's using AI, they don't have to have that conversation. And so the laws haven't caught up with that. So we can address this in so many ways. We can also build housing that is designed to not have to make a profit. So it can be a lower cost to people. Even if you have to pay for it, even if it's not free housing, you don't have to pay as much because you're just covering the cost of putting it together. And that can have an impact on other housing in the area because it is now competing with that housing. So other housing in the area either has to get better or be more affordable. So there are so many ways that the government can address all of these problems that are unpleasant for people anywhere in the economic spectrum. Homeland gemstones, you're so smart. That's so sweet. I'm just a dork. I research stuff for fun. Your nursing home lets you use TikTok. Oh, honey, I would not go back to my 20s if you paid me. But because there's just so much more drama, and you can be so much more confident in yourself when you get past that stuff. So, honey, I have earned every single one of my wrinkles. Just got the #1 gifter badge. Oh, Homeland Gemstone. Thank you. Homeland Gemstones, man, you are fantastic. 80%. Okay. Do you work for Amazon because you are Prime? Oh, I'm going to assume that's sweet. I shouldn't use Amazon, and I do, because they're really not, the things they've done to their workers is terrible, you know, the having to pee in bottles and working them in a way that causes more accidents in Amazon factories than in other warehouses. What am I saying? That causes more injuries than what happens in other warehouses. Warehousing jobs are dangerous. But I also love Amazon because it's so convenient. So I'm trying to do other good things. We're working on it. You're a great leader. That's so sweet. God, I really just feel like that I am excited about the vision that I have for the country, and I want to be honest, and I think that that is something that is missing in this realm. The entire state simply exists to enforce private property rights. In other words, exploitation. There's a lot to be said for that. That's a lot. I think you're coming from a pretty accurate perspective, honestly. But also, the country was originally developed by people who were deeply, deeply flawed, but who had a vision of having a place where they could live with more freedom. And I think that by changing up our economic system in a way that is better for working people, we can have more freedom, and we can experience life in a way that is more self-actualized. And so a lot of people focus on the fact that the state does things like, protect property. When you look at what happened during the pandemic, cops went to guard waste baskets where corporations were throwing out items that were going bad instead of allowing homeless people and needy people to take out of the garbage bin. So yes, the state has put private property rights and the concept of profit above people. And unfortunately, that is kind of where we're at. But we can change that. We are not without power. And it can feel really overwhelming. But if we vote in primaries and don't believe this, you got to pick the more electable candidate, then we can get better politicians and we can start to make a difference. We are very fortunate not to be in a country where we no longer have these avenues available. And striking is very, very effective because we are withholding our labor from the people that are making profits, which our system really values. So we are not without power, and we're going to be able to make a difference just by being strategic and just by not giving up, because they want us to give up. They want us to forget it and not pay attention, because then they can run out the back with all the money. I'm just going to watch you let my mind wander. I don't know what that means. I hope it's a good thing. But I did promise to see my my little pets. So should I stop this live stream, grab one, and come back, or should I just leave it for a second and grab them? This is new. I don't know what I should do. Homeland Gemstones, you really get to decide, because you kind of made this happen. I really don't know. Should I just keep talking until you give me an answer on this one? Because I have them in the next room. So keep educating. Okay. All right. You let me know if you want to see the pets, or if you're just helping me out. I appreciate that. I could do a whole nother video, and then it'll be something entirely. Actually, okay. Homeland Gemstones. What do you want me to talk about? I feel like if there's something that I can speak on, I'm definitely open to that. Or I could keep talking about, how we can help our economic system, and how, Marianne Williamson is trying to do that. In the meantime, I guess I'll talk about that. So we are also looking at a situation where people were told that they had to go and get a college degree. I have 2 of them. And I'm bartending now. And I always knew that that was the scenario that I was moving into, and I just like learning and I liked school, so it worked for me. But I also, oh, globalization, that's a really good one. Okay, let me switch tracks, I guess. What I was basically saying is that we're paying a ton of money to get educated, and we're not even able to make the money to be able to pay back how much it costs to get educated. And so we have a massive group of people that are entering, their adult years with so much debt that they're not buying houses, they're not starting families, they're not doing anything that allows them to engage in the American dream. And that is because they're so laden with debt for a degree that's just not worth what it used to be worth. So going to globalization, that I think is a massive reason why we're experiencing this sort of inflation right now. Because there's this thing that's called just-in-time inventory management. There's a lot of business terms that are simply used to make people feel like they don't understand what's going on. And so only special people can be the managers, but it's really simple ideas. So the concept of just-in-time inventory management is exactly what it sounds like. It means that you don't get the level of inventory that would allow you to be able to function at the highest level. You wait and you get inventory only when you've either already sold something or you're just about to sell it. You're super duper close. So you make it so that the smallest little kink in the supply chain tears apart the whole business, because you're depending on these inputs that are delivered to be able to provide your service or to be able to provide the product. So you are completely dependent on the global supply chain by having that sort of thing. But what it does is it allows you to not hold inventory and have to pay taxes on it. It also allows you to not have to basically it's a tax scheme for the most part, but it allows you to run much leaner budgets. And the leaner your budgets are, the more money you make. And the way that CEOs are paid is a lot of times they're paid in stock options. So they are incentivized to do things that will help the company in the short term, because they get to get a lot more money in the short term as their stocks increase. But they don't really care so much about the long-term health of the company. And that's why you see a lot of companies that are just buying their own stock instead of expanding and doing other things to create more profit in a more traditional way that would be better for our economy, because most CEOs aren't even there that long. So they're really only concerned about short-term profits. CNN just reported that Taylor Swift killed herself? That seems very unlikely. Can I get a second on that? I feel like looking that up would be kind of... There's so much media that looks legitimate and isn't, especially as we look at how AI is allowing us to be able to mimic people's voices. Oh, okay. No. She's playing a dead body on CSI, apparently. It's so easy though, because if you go on social media and you see this headline that looks super legitimate and you see everything edited together in a way that you're looking at it, you're I see it with my own eyes, I gotta believe it. It's so easy to be misled. And I remember when I was younger, I heard that if you baked and smoked banana skins, it would get you high. And I remember some idiots in my class actually tried it. And later on, I found out that that was literally a hoax that was spread on purpose as an experiment to see how misinformation would spread back in the 80s. It's incredible, because something that is exciting, where you see something that looks legitimate, makes it into something that one person tells another, and then suddenly we all believe it. It creates a whole new reality. So that is what we're dealing with in media. And it's really, really tough because it means that you as a viewer have to be more involved because you have to double check it yourself. And that's unfortunate because we'd all like to sit back and veg and listen to someone talk and be informed that way. But unfortunately, you're gonna have to learn how to do a little basic research. The easiest way to jump into that is to try and prove yourself wrong. And usually a quick Google search will at least tell you the different opinions of people. And then you can read the different sources and don't pick the one you want to be true. That's super duper easy to do. Pick the one that has better documentation. And that won't always be the largest corporation. There's not an easy cheat code in that way. But we can together, I think, get better at analyzing media. And I do hope that that's something that can also be focused on as we develop a whole new way of looking at media. So back to globalization. We also are looking at this debt ceiling issue right now. And unfortunately, because the debt ceiling is really, really close, we're having this little game of chicken in Congress. And we have to look at how our economy is so tied up in the international economy that anything that happens in America is going to affect countries and companies all over the globe. So we see that the value of the dollar is tied to people's belief that the United States is stable and will pay its debts. And we're already seeing the dollar's supremacy be challenged by different countries deciding to form their own like petroleum group and use different currency. But if we mess with this debt ceiling thing, then our dollar can be devalued and then we can experience some serious inflation. And that will happen if we don't pay our international debts. We have a credit rating. And the last time we got too close to the debt ceiling, our credit rating got hurt and then our interest payments went up. So it wasn't fiscally smart to do that, even though they talk about it like, well, we're just trying to be fiscally smart and not spend and have all this waste. I bet you make a killer old fashioned. Do you know me in real life? I'm pretty good at it, let's be honest. Because I'm a bartender and I've been doing it for years and I do enjoy it because I'm able to talk to people from all walks of life. And I talk politics with people all the time, which you're not really supposed to do, but I do it anyways. And it really does allow me to see that even people who are very down some rabbit hole, at the end of the day, most people want what's good for the country, and they might have different opinions on what that is. And unfortunately, if you get too deep down a rabbit hole, then you start to see other people as your enemy, and you instead turn your focus from making things better to tearing down the existential threat and that enemy. But I do feel that it is important to engage so that maybe we can get rid of some of this aggressive behavior where people think that their ideas are their identity. And if you disagree, then you're attacking like their actual identity. And it used to be that we could have these conversations more, reasonably. And I think that that is better because it keeps you from getting into your little echo chamber and believing, the electability stuff that's such a problem. So going back, also, okay, so offshoring is another aspect of globalization. Did you hear that train? No, but there is a train track nearby, so I probably just tuned it out. So it might've been me. But I also feel like that a part of globalization to talk about is offshoring jobs. And it's interesting because Trump came and said that he wanted to bring jobs back to America. And then the policies actually led to more offshoring of jobs. So it's like literally Trump came in and said some good things that spoke to the people struggling in our country, and then didn't do most of those things. So I totally understand why people were attracted to that because it was somebody who said, yes, our system is broken. So sometimes it is a really, it's a really important thing to have a politician that's willing to shake up the system. So if we talk about offshoring, it is a way that these companies have figured out that they can squeeze a little more money out of their, profit to cost ratio. And we don't really do a lot with our government to encourage us to have things made in the United States. We are not doing a good job with taxing money that is sent through offshore corporations. We're allowing corporations to buy our politicians and do whatever they want. So we can avoid some of this inflation that's caused by supply chain disruptions by bringing more jobs to the country. Trump train repeal the 19th. Typical woman always blabbing, no one listening. That's enough. All right. So I have gone over a lot of things. Oh, y'all. It's hilarious. Okay. I actually do. One of my eyes does look higher than the other one. And it's so funny. It's like it's in like cameras specifically, but yet somehow, yeah, it's very unusual for people to have like perfect symmetry on their face. But so, I mean, honestly, that's true. Did you have a seizure putting your makeup on? Well, you want to come and buy me some better makeup, honey? Dump the hush puppies out. I have no idea what that means. Drink some water. I do have some water. Cheers to that. Cheers to the people who hate me. The funny thing is when I decided to do this, the first thing I was like, am I comfortable with people hating me who've never met me? And does this matter enough to be willing to deal with that? And yes, this does matter. Making the country a better place definitely matters. Prepared. I bet it's the Grand Tetons. All right. So for those of y'all who are interested, when you tell the truth, you do get people that hate you. Yes, but that's because I think we've been taught to hate people that disagree with us. And when you have these strong emotions, your frontal lobe actually shuts down and your brain activity goes to other areas of your brain dealing with, fast reactions and emotions and things like that. So the way that a lot of people are able to make you keep watching, are able to make you, believe things that are dishonest, that are able to help you shut off your critical thinking skills, is by pissing you off. And that is how we are functioning in our media sphere right now. The name of the game for so many people is piss people off, and then they keep watching. And then that's because media is a corporation and is trying to make money. Oh, I'm not listening. Well, thanks for watching. Making the country a better place. We're kind of finding a better orthodontist. Honey, I'm going to keep my gap in my teeth. Oh, man. I hate Biden liberals. Look, I don't like Biden either. I don't know why you're saying that here. But I was very against him. Oh, my God. He has somebody that accused him of actually groping them. He doesn't seem to know where he is a lot. He's done some good things for sure. It's very important to recognize when people do good things too, because that's the only way that you can have any sort of legitimate discourse. Oh, thanks for saying I'm doing an excellent job. That's really sweet. Stop investment in Ukraine. The interesting thing about the Ukraine situation is that on the one hand, you have Ukraine, who is being invaded by Russia in a way that's completely unfair and that is bad. And I think most people at least wanted to help them to some degree. The part that's not so good is that we don't really have much oversight. And when we look back at, the war in Afghanistan and everything, we are able to see in retrospect that there was a lot of money that was just diverted to people who were dishonest. There's a lot of fraud going on. We poured money into projects that didn't help. And so by spending money uncritically, what the politicians are doing is they're sending money to their donors in the military industrial complex. And so they're just wanting to give money to those donors, and they're doing it uncritically. So while obviously, you want to help a country that is trying to defend itself, and I do understand why some people want Russia to be weakened because they're acting in a very dangerous way and are threatening to use nukes and all sorts of dreadful things. It is very interesting that we have not seemed to have learned the lessons from our war in the Middle East and that need to be critical with our military spending. We just don't do it. I mean, every single year we increase our military budget, and the military is important. I don't think that we pay our troop members enough. We don't respect their lives at all. We have troop members who are on food stamps, but every year we increase the budget for our military, whether we're at war or not, and yet we have, troop members on food stamps. So we are spending in a very uncritical way when it comes to that sort of thing. And we have never had the Pentagon be able to pass an audit. They've failed so many audits, and they've had billions of dollars just go missing. And we're like, that's okay. Just let it go missing. That's fine. So, things look like a warm water balloon. I don't know what that means. Name a good thing. One good thing. If you tell me what good thing you want me to talk about, I'll talk about it. Because there are a lot of really awesome things, but I don't know what you mean by that. Things ready to feed a village. I mean, I wish. Have you dusted your cobwebs off down there? Ukraine isn't America's problem. We've got our own issues we got to sort out. I understand that too, and I do feel like that it is silly that we never discuss the oversight or strategy for sending money to Ukraine in terms of how much money we have. But if we literally try to help pay for children's school lunches, we don't have enough money. So that's true. Give the people what they want. Tell me what you want. I can't read your mind. I'm guessing you're a public attorney for a poor town. Like I said earlier, I'm actually bartending right now. I have a degree in business, and I spend a lot of time researching, and this is what I want to do. I want to provide analysis that's a little more straightforward and a lot more honest than what we're seeing elsewhere. The media tells the people what they want. That's true because it's a business, and so they want people to keep watching. So there's a complete audience capture. Our assistance has decimated over 33% of the Russian army with a fraction of our military budget. I do think that's fabulous, and Russia is a existential threat. So none of what I'm saying is that we shouldn't support Ukraine. I don't think there's many people that don't want to, but I do think it would be reasonable to have a little more oversight. Have you seen how many people live under bridges lately? So many, especially in this town. There's a huge problem with that because the housing costs here are ridiculous. And fun fact, Ukraine doesn't have Walmart, just Targets. Oh, I don't really know anything about their Walmart situation, but that's sad. So let me go back because I've gone off on all sorts of tangents because this is fun. Even y'all that are not listening, just watching. Is there anything else that you wanted me to address before I go? And did we want to see my little rat child? Marianne Williamson, I did talk about how she wants to legalize marijuana, which most people do want to do now. I'm in Asheville, James Deering. I'm in Asheville, and I love it here, but the problem with the cost of housing is absurd, and it's also really, really tough for our homeless population. And there's other states that have shipped homeless people to Asheville because there are some things that are provided. But on the other hand, we have some people who are in charge of dealing with the crisis, and rather than doing things to help have more to have more affordable housing and to provide some sort of mental health assistance for the people who are homeless because of mental health issues, or some sort of public substance abuse treatment, instead of doing the things to address the root causes. There's a lot of people that are just going in and tearing down homeless encampments on very cold nights, and people are dying. Hello, fellow NCer, Strike for America official. Yes, striking. Yes, so good. A lot of people moving to Asheville. That's true. Resources. That is also true. The crazy thing about this country and this world is that there are the resources available so that pretty much everyone in the world could have a reasonable standard of living, but we just have a really, really bad way of allowing companies to put profits over the livelihood of the people who work there and the people that purchase from there. And so our problem isn't resources. Our problem is our inability to distribute them fairly. And I'm not talking about walking around to everybody and being like, you get a grand, you get a grand. Although if the amount of money that used to circulate in the working class and is now in like the top percentages, I think every person in America would have like, what is it, $15,000 more dollars? It's a lot of money. It's absurd. The U.S. doesn't need to take care of the bottom rung of the pyramid of needs. Or it doesn't. Oh, you're saying it doesn't, not that it doesn't need to. I'm glad that you're saying that. Yes, and when you provide a safety net, we have seen time and time again that it doesn't stop people from working. But there is a narrative that has been built that if you allow people to not be scared they're going to starve, then they won't work. I think most of us have worked with people that have enough money and incessantly work more. I think we've all met people who are a little lazy. But if you look at studies where people have been given a certain amount of income over a period of time, it is very rare that that has an impact on people's desire to work. What we are seeing is that we have lost a portion of our workforce because we have had a lot of people dying. In this past year, we had people dying from the pandemic, and then we had people dying because they killed themselves because they were dealing with lockdowns and the pandemic. And we had people who fell under to drugs because of the stressors of that, and they died as well. So we had a lot of people die. We also had a breakdown in our child care system. And so a lot of parents left the workforce because the cost of childcare was either so high or unavailable that they were no longer able to work. And because we don't have a good childcare system, these parents might want to work, but they can't because the cost of childcare would completely wipe out anything that they could make with these low-paying jobs that are available. We also, even though you hear otherwise, we have really gotten strict at the border. And that has not really changed since Biden came into office. Title 42 actually expelled people who were wanting to claim asylum before they went through the process, which technically isn't abiding by international law. And Biden left that in place until a judge struck it down as being, against international law. So we have been very, very strict at the border. We have been expelling people before hearing their asylum cases. And so the workforce has decreased. But a lot of dishonest actors have used this to say, remember that money that you got a couple years ago? Well, now people aren't working because they got $1,000 several years ago. It's like, really? Do you really think that $1,000 are going to get us through a couple years? Really? And we look at the states that decided to end the increased benefits for unemployment earlier, and those states didn't have an impact on the levels of employment and the levels of people that were going back, or the impact was like essentially non-existent. It was very, very small. Okay. What are you talking about? I don't know what you mean by that. Government isn't meant to do this. Isn't meant to make sure that the people who live there have good lives. I would argue that's the only reason for a government to exist, is to allow the individuals to have the freedom to be able to pursue self-actualization. And that's all about our priorities. The biggest difference between us and Europe, even the poor countries, is that we don't have a safety net. Strike for America official. Women have been set back in the workforce at least 20 years. The wage gap actually expanded. Biden has unfortunately kept a lot of Trump policies, including not publishing the ERA. That is true. That is very true. I love how many people have become more informed about what's going on. And I do think that's because things are falling apart and people are suffering. So because people are suffering, it is allowing us to build more of a coalition of people that are trying to figure out what's going on. And that's the only way to make things better. So sometimes things do have to start falling apart a little bit. It's not the depleted workforce. A lot of companies are scaling down due to low commerce. I'm a trucker. Oh my God, I feel so bad for anybody working in the trucking industry because it is so exploitive. For people that aren't aware, trucking companies often have their truckers purchase or, loan or rent their truck, and they say, oh, well, you'll pay for it along and along. And then once you're done paying for it, then it'll be yours and you'll get to keep all your profits. But what actually happens are that these truckers are forced to pay for all the maintenance on these trucks. And sometimes you will work for a whole week and make no money because you had to pay for the lease of it. And then often people who are truckers don't get paid for the time that they have to wait in line to pick up their cargo, only, actual miles, not when they're stuck in traffic. It is so exploitive. And it makes working people have less money. And when you have less money, you have more stress, you have less time, and you are less able to participate in the economy. And therefore, commerce is lower because less people can buy items. So our entire economy is less healthy. The concept of giving most of the money to the people at the very top was appealing because they said, hey, these are the people who create the jobs. And so if they have more money, they'll create more jobs. The economy will flourish. The people in the jobs will buy the items. And so people bought into it. In practice, what we saw is that without people to create demand, to want to buy the products, without that, companies are not going to, employ more people. They're not going to try and grow. Companies instead are going to buy their own stock. They're going to invest. They're going to do things to help increase their profit. So the only way to really grow an economy and help it have a more healthy ebb and flow, and to help companies want to expand and decide to hire more people, is if the people who are buying the items have enough money to buy the items, which they have to have a good paying job for that to be possible. And that's where the government steps in and makes it so that our minimum wage is something reasonable. It's like sharecropping on wheels. Gas goes up, wages do not. That is true. Some things do trickle down. Most of them are unpleasant. Yes, because think about it. We're dealing with a system where we literally are watching these companies take profits and then put the costs of their businesses onto consumers. So think about the railroads. We have these railroad companies experiencing these horrifying train derailments all the time. We're talking about the one from East Palestine because it is so absurd how the entire, area is poisoned and all of these animals died and they are experiencing the effects of chemical exposure. And because of this, we are seeing this company decide to do things that hurt the individuals around them, but that help their bottom line. So there are a lot of people who said there was a safer way to get those chemicals off of the train other than literally burning them, but it would have taken more time and more money, and they needed to get the trains back on schedule. And so they did this burn, and they're like, oh, it's because we're worried about an explosion. But there were ways to deal with that were safer for the people who lived in the area. And they chose not to do that because they knew that they could turn around and be like, hey, I'll give you $1,000 to all of these people impacted, and that they might have to pay a fine, but the profits that they make from these decisions so far exceed the costs in lawsuits or fines that they keep doing this sort of behavior. We literally have Civil War era braking systems, and we could, as a government, say, you have to have better braking systems. You have to have more people on a train that is carrying hazardous materials, so you're not literally on fire for a really long time before you even realize that there's a problem. We watched this railroad union try to strike, and Biden, who claims to be someone who supports unions so much, decided to make the strike illegal and try and shut it down. And he could, Congress could have decided, instead of making this strike illegal, they could have just as easily said that the corporations have to give these people a couple sick days and have, some safety things put into place. So it is about decisions and what we care about. And if we only care about the profits of corporations and we don't care about the collateral damage, then these companies will continue to decide to make profits at any cost. We look at how they dealt with the vaccine, and there were all of these countries that wanted to get the vaccine and they wanted to be able to produce it themselves. But the, pharmaceutical corporations, who didn't even pay for research and development in the case of Moderna, that was created with government funding. They're like, nope, we're not going to temporarily waive the patent protections. And so the result of that is that these other countries that are poorer didn't have a vaccine, so there was more transmission, which created more variants, which then make their way over to America, and then America has need of the vaccine more because there's new variants, so then they have to have new formulas for the vaccine. So it benefits the companies, and it doesn't benefit the humans, because that's the real, thing around the vaccine. That's the actual, conspiracy, is the fact that we decided to let this company put their profits over allowing countries to just let the virus run unchecked and then create more variants that would make their way here. So I feel like I should go back to Marianne Williamson, because I was kind of and take a deep breath and take a nap. I'm really pissing off some of you, so I must be doing a good job. So going back to her, I just would encourage everyone to check out what she's actually trying to do. She's trying to make this a system that works for the average working family. She wants to make education work better. She wants to be able to increase the research to help us understand how to best support the children of this country. She wants to help deal with student debt so that a whole generation of people can start families and buy houses and engage in our system. She wants to bring back economic policies that allow working people to flourish, to raise the minimum wage. She wants to, decriminalize marijuana, which many people use for pain relief. And we're having a problem with opioids. A lot of people have been able to find relief through marijuana as opposed to opioids, and we should be able to support that sort of thing. So I hope that anyone who comes across this decides to go and look into what she's actually saying. She's a very intelligent person who is definitely not the woo-wah lady that, she's been made out to be. So I guess what I'll do is I'll make a little video with one of my little ratty children, since we did get to this this goal that I set. And it seems like that we are more interested in talking about these topics. So if people don't have any more questions, I'm going to go and hopefully do this again soon. Y'all have been very delightful, and I'm very, very grateful. So thank you. And the fact that you guys are interested in what's going on politically and want to make this country a better place just gives me so much hope for the future. So thank you very, very much. Dr. Dixie, number one gifter badge. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I am reading over comments, so if anybody wants me to address anything specific, I will see it and I will put it in the queue. So anything else that we need to address today, or are we gonna go our merry way? You know, railroads are actually the reason why corporations have more rights than a lot of humans. I would love to hear more about that because I don't doubt it. Railroads are one of the older corporate entities and they're pretty corrupt and are natural monopolies. So it makes sense that they would have the money to go ahead and get our politicians to do whatever they want. So definitely leave some Strike for America official. Leave some comments on some videos. I will definitely be excited to check those out. You have a lot of really good things to say, so thank you. All right. Have a lovely night, y'all.